I remember being on the medical wards as an FY1 in particular as well, and that's when Google kind of was starting to become a thing, and people were coming up with the tone of, oh, I'm going to Google that kind of stuff. So that's kind of where we were in the technology sphere, and Facebook had only really just started as well. And in terms of learning, I got quite interested in the fact that you could use these kind of resources to learn things. So definitely YouTube, sharing information, that kind of stuff. And, I'd use that to try and learn skills. I think a lot of it was more about trying to use tech to help me with my notes and that kind of stuff. So I started looking at transcription and recording of, and the way that I would talk about things. So using my phone to record things. And I even went out and got a dictaphone to try and help me with that. And that would help clarify my learning, because then I could listen back to lectures and that kind of thing. And just starting to use, things like PowerPoint, all that kind of stuff to share learning as well. But it wasn't until I started actually in my GP training that I really got into the whole use of tech.
Could you give us an example of how you use technology as a GP to make you more productive, Gandhi?
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's so many different ways, and we would need hours for me to go through that in detail. But simple, quick fixes. If you are slow at typing, there's a really good website out there that can help you to speed up the way that you're typing by turning it into a game called Keybar. So it's KEYBR.com. And you can dial in from anywhere. You just need a web connection, and you can start to learn to type quicker. And actually, that's one of the best ways to speed up your consultations. However, if you're the type of person that clearly just cannot stand typing, and that's not something you want to focus on, then actually looking at things like audio dictation, because actually those systems can be really effective at trying to help you transfer what you need to into the patient's notes, and that's a proportionate amount of time that we spend in clinical practice is the admin side of things.
Hi, my name is Dr. Erwin Kwun. I am on a mission to dissect what makes high performers, innovators, and great leaders successful. With this podcast, I aim to share insights from interesting and exciting conversations with people who have figured it out to inspire you and empower you with actionable tips you can put into practice to hopefully improve your life. Hello, Success Nation. In this week's episode, I have Dr. Hussain Gandhi. He is owner of EGP Learning, a website designed to help technology enhance primary care and learning. He also co-hosts the EGP Learning Podblast, the UK's most popular primary care focused health technology podcast. And he's also known as Dr. Gandalf. He's a GP with an intellect and geeky style of Time Lord and magic presence and bird of Gandalf. Welcome to the show, Dr. Gandalf.
Hi, Owen. How are you doing?
I'm thrilled to have you on the show, Dr. Gandalf. We're going to talk about health tech, about your entrepreneurship projects, and much more. So let's get into it. How was Hussain Gandhi in high school? If I was in high school with you, who were you?
In high school, I was the classic geek, hands down. I was the kind of kid that top of the class, generally, just because I tried to work hard, and as I said, I was a bit of a geek. But yeah, I was the one with glasses that used to enjoy all the geeky kind of things, and yeah, it was an interesting time school for me, and one that I enjoyed, but also like many kids had parts that weren't as good. But yeah.
So when you were in high school, was it always aimed to become a doctor?
Yeah, I think quite early on I tried to figure out what I wanted to do, and I always had this absolute love of science. Really, it just clicked for me. The arts and stuff, I was never really, I didn't have that affinity for, but I also like talking to people. So I kind of tried to think about what kind of roles could I enjoy, and what would I enjoy doing. So I came up with a variety of things. I had a rocket scientist that was at the top of the thing, because every kind of kid wants to be a rocket scientist at some point. And then I went from that to a wrestler. Interestingly, because some of the people that know me know I have a big love of wrestling and things. And then actually, when it started to get more considered about it, I kind of went down the route of potentially being a pharmacist. So I thought, let's give it a try. And I went and worked in a couple of dispensing pharmacies and found it out I absolutely hated it. Partly because I didn't like the whole concept of being behind the desk and working on the shop floor and that kind of stuff. It just didn't work for me at all. So then I thought, let's give doctoring a try, and went and spent some time with a colleague, a friend of the family, in their practice, and actually kind of really enjoyed that relationship that the doctors had with their patients, and could see that. And yeah, that from then on, it was just like, yep, let's go for it. And yeah, here I am.
Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, it's so valuable to have some time and spend what you want to do, because so many people
Hmm.
who don't know when they're in high school what they want to do, and spending time with people who are doing the job is a good way to know what you want to do, what you don't want to do.
No, I agree. Work experience is very important to clarify whether it's the kind of role that you want. And I've had people come up to me and say, I'm thinking of being a doctor, and the first thing I always tell them is, sit in with other doctors. Go, whether it's if it's possible in the hospitals, if it's in a practice, but actually spend some time and make sure that it's something that you actually want to do.
Absolutely. So after that, then you went into medical school. How do you find med school?
I loved medical school. So I went to Leeds Medical School. I was there from 1999 till 2005, I think it was. And yeah, it was a great time. Made some amazing friends who are still in contact with at this time. Going to another city as well. So I was Nottingham born and bred, and it was my first kind of time away from family and things. And I actually got really um, I just love the city of Leeds. It was a great place to be. It's a university city. It really welcomed me with open arms. And from then on, kind of shifted to Bradford shortly afterwards because of GP training and all that kind of stuff. And then actually ended up staying up in Yorkshire for about 13 years. So, just under a third of my life has been spent in Yorkshire. And, you know, my wife comments I'm a little bit of a farmer as a result of all the time I spent up there and things. Um, but yeah, I absolutely loved medical school and the time that I had there.
Oh yeah, I spent a foundation year in Yorkshire and work in York and Hull. Yorkshire is a beautiful place to live in.
Definitely. I mean the fact that you can be in the city and 10 minutes later be out in the countryside is just amazing. And the sights to see, the people as well. Actually, it's friendly up in Yorkshire. It's nice.
Yeah. So then in medical school, did you have any ideas and what you were going to do?
No, I think like many people, I was trying to find my feet and understand what parts of medicine I really enjoyed. I kind of got into genetics quite a lot, and actually went off and did a BSc, integrated BSc in genetics, and kind of realized that science degrees were not my thing as well. So the difference between medical school training and formal kind of science degree based trainings was quite different. Although it was a good time, and I learned a lot. I kind of clarify that there's definitely my own kind of learning style that I prefer. It's more that experiential kind of learning process rather than that formal rote kind of process of from books and trying to assimilate that information and regurgitate it in effect, which is what a lot of the assessments that I had in the genetics degree seem to be about. Compared to learning through experience, the way that you kind of learn things like consultation skills is clearly different from the way that you learn book smarts and that kind of stuff. So I think med school really enjoyed, but in terms of what I wanted to be, I was still umming and ahhing. I was definitely favouring general practice because of the kind of like the opportunities it had, but also really enjoyed actually acute medicine, and particularly being towards the end on the wards and that kind of stuff. Really enjoyed it. Um, and then that kind of transmuted into my training, F1, F2. So I was in the start of when foundation year training kind of became formalized, and that kind of experience was amazing. I had some really good people I worked with, and in actual fact, so this is a little bit of a story actually. The reason I'm called Dr. Gandalf was because of the first SHO I ever worked with. He kind of gave me that moniker. So with my surname being Gandhi and my love of magical and mythical kind of things, he just kind of came up with the name of, oh, well, I'm going to call you Dr. Gandalf, and it kind of stuck from there. Actually, and yeah, continued. But it was around about that time that I kind of realized that although I really enjoyed acute medicine and stuff, one of the things I also wanted was I had ideas of other things I wanted to do. And as a result of that, I think general practice, the combination of the continuity and speaking with patients and that opportunity to be more flexible in the things that you could do, meant that it was clearly the career option for me.
Yeah, general practice gives you a lot of opportunities, and you can actually carve a career in something you're interested. I wanted to ask you, Gandhi, when you were learning and studying in your postgraduate training, was there anything that you found that was traditional and you wanted to learn through new methods like using technology, YouTube? I don't know. Was there anything that you were looking at?
So when I was training, and particularly in medical school, I think a lot of the technology kind of bases were only just starting. So YouTube had only really come into existence. I remember being on the medical wards as an FY1 in particular as well, and that's when Google kind of was starting to become a thing, and people were coming up with the tone of, oh, I'm going to Google that kind of stuff. So those kind of that's kind of where we were in the technology sphere, and Facebook had only really just started as well. And in terms of learning, I got quite interested in the fact that you could use these kind of resources to learn things. So definitely YouTube, sharing information, that kind of stuff, and I'd use that to try and learn skills. I think a lot of it was more about trying to use tech to help me with my notes and that kind of stuff. So I started looking at transcription and recording of and the way that I would talk about things. So using my phone to record things, and I even went out and got a dictaphone to try and help me with that, and that would help clarify my learning because then I could listen back to lectures and that kind of thing. And just starting to use things like PowerPoint, all that kind of stuff to share learning as well. But it wasn't until I started actually in my GP training that I really got into the whole use of tech. And I think the reason I became so interested in it was because actually Internet Explorer 6, if I'm being honest. So some of you that will remember that the internet browsers used to be a completely different beast to what they are now. And Internet Explorer 6, there was no such thing as tab browsing. There was no opportunity to handle lots of different things at once. And I remember being in consultations wanting to look up stuff. So looking at GP Notebook, looking at patient.info, looking at guidelines and researching them rather than having to go off and do that separately. I'd like to do that in the consultation with the patient. But Internet Explorer 6 was inherently really bad at letting you do that quickly and effectively. And what I wanted was just basically a dashboard that I could click and it'd take me straight to the relevant sites rather than me having to open another browser, type it in, and because even favorites wasn't really a big thing at that point. So I kind of went off and created a website. And I kind of searched on how to do it and created a very basic website that was like a dashboard and presented that to my GP VTS and kind of said, look, I've done this. Do you like it? And they were like, yeah, that's actually a really good idea. That's really useful and helps, obviously you get your resources and that kind of stuff. And, it helps with the shared learning because it pulls the resources everybody's using. So I said to them, well, do you want it? You can have it. I don't mind. I can easily brand this as a VTS kind of thing. And they were like, no, actually, we'd rather do it ourselves because if you go, then we're a bit stuck and that kind of stuff. I was like, okay, fine. So then I kept mine, and then that's effectively how EGP learning started. And I just continued that for a while. Not really putting any significant time or investment into it, but just maintaining the links and the resources that was in that. And then as I finished my training, I kind of really got into the whole peer support side of things. So helping my peers in terms of the different ways that can happen. So particularly with the RCGP, the Royal College of General Practitioners, and I got quite involved in that side of things. And I actually used the site to try and help with that shared learning. So the various other kind of resources outside of the clinical sphere. And that's basically where EGP learning continued to grow and lead from.
That's amazing. So when you started the website, did you actually
Mm-hmm.
code? How did you go about everything online?
Yes. So, although I'm fairly proficient with majority types of tech, the one thing I can't do and one skill I haven't ever had the dedication to learn is coding. I wish I could. I feel that if I knew how to code, then I'd probably be able to do so much more. But like with many things, I've just never had the time to dedicate to try and do that effectively. So at that point, there was the start of the what you see, what you get kind of website creators and that kind of thing. So very I was very basic in what I could do. My website was literally just a landing page. Since then, the technology that allows you to create a website has significantly improved. So actually, you don't need to know coding to make a website anymore. It's no different from creating a picture. Basically, you just stick the relevant bits together, and it works. And often, it works really well. So actually, that's how I tend to do things. I have started to learn little bits and things, so I know a little bit about HTML code and the back end of kind of things, but not to the point where I could ever say that I would be a proficient coder and things. Which that's maybe an aspirational thing for some time in the future, but unfortunately, I've got a nasty habit of picking up other projects, so they tend to take my time.
We'll talk about these projects later on, but I want to get into the fact that even if you did no coding, you still went and do your website, and you do allow that to stop you. And there's a lot to say about doing things and doing by learning. And you're an example of doing that when you started EGP Learning. So, what's the long-term vision with EGP Learning, Gandhi?
So EGP Learning kind of changed at points. So initially, it just started off, like I said, as a dashboard, purely actually for me more than anything. I just wanted something to have all those resources in one place that I could find quickly and effectively, and then use as I needed to in my clinical thing. And then I kind of thought, well, actually, this is something that's useful for others. And that's where my kind of drive to try and help others started, in a sense. And so I added in, like I said, the non clinical things. So things like how to get your CCT, how to find groups that you may want to patch into in terms of learning and stuff, how to, look at indemnity and tips and that kind of stuff. And I really got interested in that whole kind of helping people function and manage their lives in primary care, particularly the way that they learn as well. So after I finished my GP training, I went off and did an academic teaching fellowship at the University of Leeds, and really got into the whole concept of teaching and that kind of side of things. And I've always been a big fan of that. So from then it was teaching medical students. When I came back to Nottingham, the first thing I did was start to my trainer process and things so that I could train GPs, and particularly that apprenticeship kind of model that we have in general practice is really powerful thing. I think to be able to help someone become a GP is a unique kind of opportunity, and not the kind of teaching that we tend to see much of at this point. So um, that teaching, that sharing of resources, that want to help others has always been there, and that's where EGP learning then matured. I guess with that has been my knowledge of tech and the various different resources. So just over time, I've always had an interest in tech, and particularly social media and the resources that we can have. And I just like to share them, really, and that's where EGP Learning's matured into what it is now, which is effectively a platform. From my perspective, anyway, it's a way of me being able to share all the variety of different resources and things that are there. And then about 2 years ago, I kind of changed that to be what it is now. So not just a simple website. It was always originally just a website, nothing more. But then about 2 years ago, a couple of things changed. So family life, I had different priorities, as well as actually I kind of realized that I wanted to share things in a different way, and social media was growing massively. And I found colleagues that actually had a similar drive. So that's when I started doing the podcast with my colleague, Dr. Andy Foster. And we created basically the GP Learning Pod Blast, a method of sharing our knowledge, and basically us wanting to chat and wanting to know if anybody wanted to hear us. And actually, it seems they do, because the feedback we get from that is amazing, and it's what drives us, and it's what makes us continue to want to do that kind of work, and sharing our resources, sharing our knowledge, sharing the opportunities that technology can bring in primary care, because it can, it can help. And that's then just gradually matured into what the platform is now, and I'm sure there's more to come.
Yes, I've been following EGP Learning, and you seem to be very active and consistent on social media. How do you
Mm-hmm.
tailor your posts for each platform, Gandhi?
I think that's the first thing you have to recognize, that each platform is completely different. I mean, there are definitely ways you can just share things from a central place, and it not be within the platforms themselves. But if you want to use the different platforms effectively, you kind of have to work with them and understand how they work, and that's definitely one thing I kind of enjoy. So both on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. The kind of the big five that I tend to use. There are plethora of other platforms out there, and there are ways to try and manage those differently, but they all have their abilities and they all have their different uses. So majority of my time probably spend on Facebook, because that's where majority of GPs are when you consider things like social media and stuff. Um, so there's a variety of different groups, and there's a group for everything out there, for example. But as a method of trying to engage with people, it's quite effective because Facebook do one thing really well, which is enable people to discuss things. Their forum structure, the way that you can thread conversations, that kind of thing, and the way that you can share information into Facebook is really easy. But And I think that's where it can be a really useful platform to develop your community, to develop your network of people. And I've met some amazing people through social media, and particularly through Facebook and stuff. Twitter, is more of a broadcasting platform. It's better at trying to share information, but to then drive the engagement, you have to have a message that people want to hear. And that's sometimes the challenge that some people find, because you can just broadcast all you want, but if it's not a message that people want to hear, they're not going to listen, and you're not going to get the traction that sometimes people want. Instagram's obviously newer. It's very much image and media based in terms of pictures, videos, that kind of stuff. I kind of get Instagram, but I don't like Instagram like the other platforms. I find the engagement a bit more challenging because it's much more real time. It needs to be for the algorithms and stuff to want to pick you up, and being a busy GP, that may not always be possible. And YouTube is probably my biggest passion at the moment because it's just fun creating videos. Really enjoy it. Really enjoy, the way that I can create that kind of content and trying to find things that work. And you can get so involved in things like the analytics and how to do it. And there's thousands of channels out there that show you how to use YouTube effectively. And just learning from it has been really interesting. And that's learning that I think I've transferred across to various other skills in terms of the way that work with the practice, in terms of the way work with the faculty, in terms of the way that work even with patients. It can be really powerful way to learn how to communicate.
It's great that you're promoting innovation in primary care through these different platforms, because these are new layers that have been added on the internet, and we need more people to actually create good resources for GPs, for GP trainees, because technology is the future.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I mean, there's no doubt that technology is increasingly becoming part of the way that we work. Even if it wasn't just for the general progression of technology itself, but if you look at the GP contract, that has technology adaptation at its core, and we are going to see that primary care needs to move with the tech that's out there, and it can be really helpful. I mean, there's so many different resources out there that can make your life much easier when you're practicing in clinical practice and things. There are always considerations. There's always things you need to be careful of. So definitely the IT governance side is always a big issue, particularly when we're talking about patient data. And also culture change, actually. The biggest challenge with using new technology is the culture change that comes with it and the usability, because of trying to get people to use that new resource. Because generally the tech is okay. It works. It will normally do the job that it's meant to do. I think the biggest challenge and the reason why a lot of people are fearful of it is partly it's that want of not knowing how to use it, but also changing from what you're currently doing and worrying that it's going to create a new work stream, which it can do, very clearly can do. But sometimes that extra work stream can, if you do it right, be something that means that your life is so much easier. And I think we're just going to see more and more of tech becoming part of the work that we do.
Could you give us an example of how you use technology as a GP to make you more productive, Gandhi?
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's so many different ways, and we would need hours for me to go through that in detail. But simple, quick fixes. If you are slow at typing, there's a really good website out there that can help you to speed up the way that you're typing by turning it into a game called Keybar. So it's keybr.com. And you can dial in from anywhere. You just need a web connection, and you can start to learn to type quicker. And actually, that's one of the best ways to speed up your consultations. However, if you're the type of person that clearly just cannot stand typing, and that's not something you want to focus on, then actually looking at things like audio dictation, because actually those systems can be really effective at trying to help you transfer what you need to into the patient's notes, and that's a proportionate amount of time that we spend in clinical practice is the admin side of things. So they're quick wins.
KEYBR. That's
keybr.com. Happy to share. So I've done a review of the site. I'm not in any way affiliated with it. I just find it as a really amazing resource to learn how to type quicker. So I increased my typing speed by about 30% just by spending 5 minutes of that a day for about a couple of weeks. And I got 30% quicker at typing. And to the point where I can now type without looking at the screen. I'm by no means at the speed of like our typists and stuff. So my average speed is now about 50 words a minute compared to our typist in the practice who can type at 90 words a minute. I mean, that's just amazing. But it does make a difference. And like I said, I can now type without looking at the screen, so I can sometimes type during my consultations, and that saves time, which actually the most valuable resource we ever have in life is time.
Absolutely, yeah. So when I first started in GP surgery, what I found was that when I spoke with a patient and then I waited for the patient to go and then started typing, so it took a considerable amount of time. Yeah, typing is something that is one of the things that slows you in consultation. And if you're having to type your letters as well, it's another chunk of time.
Yeah, I mean, tips with that are simply, you don't have to wait for the patient to leave. There's nothing to say you can't type whilst the patient's there. And actually, many patients find that engaging because they can see that you're doing the work at that point. It's important to recognize how you communicate that to patients so that you don't make it come across that you're ignoring them. And tips like that are to say simply, "Oh, that's really useful information. Let me just jot that down." And getting that down quickly and briefly within the consultation, it can help to break up things, and it also gives you a bit of thinking time as well, if you use it effectively. But similarly with the letters, typing your letters there and then with the patient in the consultation, saying, "Okay, so I need to put this part in. Look, and that can actually really help with engagement because they see that you're doing that work right in front of them. And then that question of, unfortunately, we're at a point in the NHS where sometimes referrals can take quite a significant amount of time. At least that element of the patient feeling, why is it taking so long, is not down to the fact that because you've not done it. So I've worked in practices where some places they will do the referral a week or so after they've seen the patient, and actually that I don't feel that's effective, and it's not necessary as well. There are ways to change that. And dictation can be the alternate one, like I said, if you feel that your typing's not going to be that speed, but actually just using an auto dictation piece of software to do it for you.
Yeah. So yeah, there are different ways to actually improve your productivity in general practice. And the other thing I wanted to ask you, about chasing results. When do you tend to do it? Some practice they do it when they have small amount of time in between patients. Other practice they do it at the end. Like what are your systems in general
Yeah,
practice?
I mean, it depends on which clinical system I think you're using. That's one thing to be aware of because the clinical systems all do things in slightly different ways. But I think having a mechanism for you to be able to follow up your results is very important. So the ones that I'm concerned about, I'll send myself a task to. So I'm a System One user through and through, and actually that's one of my other kind of hats. So I run a group called the System One Facebook user groups on Facebook, as you can tell. And that's a significant cohort of GPs that talk about how to use System One effectively. So one of the big clinical systems that we use in primary care, and that has a system built in where you can task. And my default mechanism is that I always task myself. So the majority of the tasks I tend to send are to myself to chase up things, or to remind me to do this, to do that, and if not, then if it comes back to me, well, I can always divert it to the relevant person so it doesn't get lost in the ether. So I guess that's my safety mechanism in that respect. But in terms of chasing up results and things, so you can do. I think the thing is, there's this myth that multitasking is time saving, and it's not. So the fact that you can do multiple things at once doesn't really save you time, particularly when you talk about clinical work, when you talk about general practice work, because a lot of the tasks that we do as GPs is actually cognitively very challenging. So you need to research into the records, or you need to think about how you're going to do this. So doing two cognitive tasks at the same time, it never works. And what I would tend to do is wait and just do all my pathology things in one block. So whether that's first thing in the morning or last in the evening, I try not to do it during the day, because actually that's breaking up my day and it's diverting me from other tasks. And actually, there shouldn't really be a need for me to do that. But I tend to spend about 10 minutes in the morning when I'm logging on, and then 10 minutes just before I leave, just making sure there's nothing urgent I need to deal with, and just clearing them out.
Yeah, I think that's a good point you make, because many people think that multitasking is a productive tool in the toolkit, whereas when you single task, you're actually focusing all your attention on something and you do it more quickly. And you also mentioned that you batch your work, and that's one of the things that will stop you from multitasking. And sometimes you have to multitask, if like you have the receptionist who comes in the door and have a prescription sheet that you need to sign, and you have to go in the record of the patient and check before you sign. But as much as possible, single task is a way to do it.
Definitely. And even with that kind of interruption basis, it's looking at why are those interruptions happening? Is that because of you're trying to deal with somebody else's anxiety? So is that because of the receptionist's anxiety of trying to want to offload a task that they have? And that's why they're interrupting you? Well, is that interruption appropriate? If that happens, should there be a better way of dealing with those interruptions? So, one of the things I say to my staff is, if they're coming into my room to interrupt me, that pretty much should be because somebody's passing out. That's pretty much the only time they should ever come and interrupt me in my clinical room. If they need my attention, well, then they send me a message saying I've got something that you need to deal with, and I will then contact them back when I've dealt with my current task. Because actually, it's rare, apart from those urgent medical situations where you need to deal with something, even if it's a patient waiting for a prescription. The reality is they can wait, because I'm not like I'm sat around doing anything. If I was having my lunch, fine. That can be something I might, if I'm on call, I'll deal with it. If I'm not, actually, then again, I'm on my lunch break at that point. um, but clearly it depends on the task, but it's important to have structure and a way of looking at how those tasks are dealt with. So, like I said, my main way of saying that is that you don't knock on my door unless there's a very good reason. You message me first, and I'll be able to tell you what we need to do from there, based on what I'm currently doing.
Yeah, I think it's good to have structures and that staff knows how things work so that you don't get interrupted unnecessarily. So you mentioned that you are also Facebook group administrator in System One, and you also hold other hats. Would you be able to tell us a little bit about the other roles you have, Gandhi?
Sure. How long have you got? um, so yeah. So if I was to list all my roles, I think we'd be here for quite a while. I guess the big one. So as we mentioned, I'm a GP. Also GP trainer. In a city practice in Nottingham. I run the GP learning platform, and that has various different strands in terms of there's different social medias as well as the website and stuff. Um, I'm also the treasurer of a group called GP Survival. So that's a group designed to try and support GPs with a lot of the political challenges that we're currently facing. That was created out of sheer frustration, I think, that was going on a few years ago in terms of general practice. And over that time, I think the group has done some really amazing things. We've tackled some big challenges like capita, and tried to support practices in terms of raising awareness of the challenges that we've had with that group. More currently, we're doing things with pensions. So, pensions is a big challenge that many GPs are having to deal with at this point. And our current chair, Nick, has just been amazing in terms of looking and supporting people to really try and get over this massive issue when it comes to our pensions. And what I would say clearly is a declaration of interest, because I'm the treasurer. If you did want to support us, we'd be more than happy to have that support, because the committee that does all this work does it for free. But obviously, resources can mean that we can do more. Um, In addition, I am also the national representative to the RCGP Council. So I was elected by my peers last year, and I'm now currently about 7 months into my first 3 year term kind of thing. And that's been really amazing for me. Actually, I've got to learn and understand so much about how things work with better within the college, but also in terms of trying to push the agenda. I think for those GPs that don't always get their voice heard, and speaking for my peers, I feel that I'm hoping I'm doing a good job. I try my best to do a good representative role. And I hope I am. And I always say to people, if I'm not, then please tell me, because I'd like to try and make sure I'm doing a good job in that respect. And then I'll hold a few other kind of things that I do. So I'm about to start becoming a PCN clinical director, so primary care network clinical director from our local patch. So trying to integrate the way that we work in primary care locally a little bit more effectively, as well as I'm also a podcast editor for Innovate and representative to my local RCGP faculty and my local LMC, which to your listeners, if you're not engaged with your local LMC, I would highly recommend it. It is probably the most valuable local resource you will ever find in terms of contracting stuff. And clearly, if you're a member of the RCGP, definitely get involved with your local RCGP faculty. You'd be amazed at what they can offer you.
So there's many roles that you hold. How do you juggle with all these roles?
So I don't sleep. It's probably the first thing. Um, yeah, many people say I've got the internet plugged into my brain, and that's probably because I do literally have it plugged into my brain, I think. But it's about compartmentalization. I by no means am the expert at it, and I think there's definitely things I can improve on. I try and spend a lot of time with my family as best as I can, and I appreciate that sometimes I get that wrong. Sometimes I get it right. But yeah, planning, having a method, and making sure that you've got everything clear what you're doing. And actually, the biggest lesson I've learned over the past couple of years is to start to learn to say no to things, because actually it can feel like there's so many things that are coming your way, particularly when you start becoming pretty good at something. People want you to do more of it, and actually learning to say no and recognize that that's fine, that's okay, and that can be a really hard lesson, particularly for doctors, because we are generally, type A personalities that are generally very good at what we do. And therefore, we've also got that element of, we like to change things, we like to be involved with things, and actually learning that saying no sometimes is okay and probably the best thing to do. And that's something I'm still learning, but actually I'm getting better at as well, because it's self-protectioning, and it is, I think, something that people need to recognize.
Yeah, it's very important to be able to know your limit and to say no. One of the things that previous guest said, Dr. Mahibur Rahman, is every time you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. So whenever we're accepting to do something, we need to recognize that we're refusing something else, and that may make the process of saying no easier.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, what I would say to most people is, if you want to be effective at what you do, pick the things that mean something to you. Have those core values or those core aims. This is what I want to accomplish in my life. The best person I think to ever conceptualize this is actually Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett's the investor over in America that is worth billions. And he's written multiple books, but and I can't remember this word for word, so I apologize if I got this wrong. But effectively, what he talks about is having three main aims, and this is what you want to achieve in your life. You have your long term aims, you have your medium term aims, and your medium term aims have to link to your long term ones. And it's just setting out what it is you want to achieve. Once you've got that clear, this is what I want, this is what I need to do in my life. If whatever comes your way doesn't align in some ways to help you achieve that, then the answer is no. Simply put, you don't do it. Or if you are saying yes, it has to be something that can be done quickly, effectively, and then it's kind of sorted. Because ultimately, everything should align to what you want to achieve with your life, because you've decided this is what I want to do. And if you do that, things work out fine. The challenge is sometimes getting that panicky kind of, oh no, but this might help me here and this might help me here, but it's not actually aligned to what you want to achieve. And therefore that's where people can end up going down rabbit holes that end up sucking up their time, and therefore they're not doing kind of what they want, how they want to do it, and they end up in situations that sometimes then can make them feel worse about themselves, or not just be what they want to be doing, really.
Yeah, absolutely. There's this big anxiety of fear of missing out. People can't say no because they think that will happen at some point and they won't get more opportunities. But actually, if you become the best in one or two fields, you actually get so many opportunities and you have to say no.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, in podcasting, the term is niche down effectively. So, when people talk about being someone that can speak about your area, it's making sure that you are doing that in a very focused area, because then you're the person people will go to speak about that kind of stuff, rather than um, you know being a generalist. GPs are amazing generalists, but when you're talking about being someone with authority, being a generalist, you could be someone that speaks on authority on being a generalist, but actually that doesn't appeal to those more specific kind of things. So, the whole concept of niching down and focusing on what you want to achieve is a very powerful message, I think, and it's one that we're not really taught as GPs, because we're always taught to do everything, and you can't do everything. That's the reality of things. You can have a concept of being able to address everything, but you can't do it all, because otherwise you just end up doing nothing.
Yeah, good point. And I know that with your podcast, you talk a lot about health technology, and you have your colleague who helps you. I've noticed that you're also going to talk at the RCGP annual conference. So did this opportunity come from the podcast?
So I've spoken at the RCGP conference a few times in the past. For those that don't know, you can apply to speak at the RCGP conference every year. So it's normally around about January time. They put out the calls for people who want to speak and things. And actually, for the past few years, I've not been able to go because it happens to normally coincide with the same time that my son's birthday is. And I'll be honest, my son's birthday is more important to me than the conference, no matter how important the conference is to me. But this year, thankfully, they're not at the same time. So I can do that. So I put an idea with a couple of other colleagues about a session to try and show people about the way that, social media and platforms, so podcasting, blogging, and vlogging, can be effective for GPs. And that's what we're going to be talking about at the conference in Liverpool. So there's three of us. There's Ben Gowland, who runs the General Practice podcast. There's Jonathan Ashworth, who's really inspirational blogger. He's done some really cool things and a couple of interesting TED Talks and stuff. And then myself talking about the vlogging and the social media and that kind of thing. So we're hopefully going to have a really good session for people, and feel free to come down and watch us. And if we can, we will make sure that it's live streamed as well, some way, shape, or form, so that you guys who can't attend can also engage.
Yeah, that sounds very promising. And I'd like to talk about how you started the EGP learning and then develop it. So, were there any challenges that you faced, Gandhi?
Yeah. So EGP learning has been an interesting journey for me. Um, like I said, so I started because I wanted basically a dashboard, and I created it because the local VTS said they didn't want it. And then from that, I just gradually started to learn how to develop the website and things. I remember being at my first RCGP conference, and my hosting company that I had at that time had basically messed up with the payments for the website and closed it literally the day before I was meant to present about how to use technology to help people. And obviously, a lot of that focused around the website that I built at that time. So I remember being up in Glasgow, literally trying to sort out this whole problem a few hours before I was meant to present to my peers at the conference how to use a website, and then my website wasn't working. So that was not a great time for me. About a year or two after that, my website got hacked. I'm not quite sure why. I don't see why it would be something valuable for someone to hack, but yeah, it did, and I had to start from scratch again. I learned a very important lesson at that point. Make sure you've always got a backup of things. So now I've got systems in place to back up my website on a regular basis, to make sure I don't lose, hopefully, all my content and things. But that was quite an unpleasant period, and that's where kind of it stalled for quite a while, because to get back into doing it after that took a bit of time and a bit of effort, and it kind of made me think, was it worthwhile? But I carried on and gradually just tinkered around with it from there, and then it's improved to what it is now. And from that process, it's just gradually iterated and changed, and morphed into what the platform is at this point.
It's quite heartbreaking to see when these things happen, but actually it's an opportunity to create new things and you can make it better.
Sometimes pressing the reset button can be one of the most powerful things that you can do, because it makes you think: is this effective? Is it worthwhile? And is this what I should be doing? And if it's not, then is there a better way I can do things? And I think being able to have that kind of process where you can just change things again can be really useful. But it is time consuming. That's the only downside.
So now I want to talk about some of the life lessons. We'll go into the lightning round. So I'll ask you some questions, and if you can answer first thing that pop in your mind. What is the definition of success to you, Gandhi?
I think success is being effectively valued. If you can do something and somebody gains value from that, then you've done it well. It's as simple as that.
What took you a long time to realize?
How to say no.
Let's say no. Have you dealt with what seemed to be a crisis or failures at the time, which later turned out to be a blessing in disguise?
So I think when my website got hacked, that was definitely a failure from my perspective, because I had to restart. But actually, doing so meant that I could change things. Like I said, it's pressing that reset button. So from that, it was really useful and valuable for me.
And what was your self talk during that time?
So it was basically, do I continue doing this? Because at that point, the website didn't create any benefit for me apart from just being something for me to share with other people. So that question of, what is this going to achieve for me? Is it just a hobby that I've spent loads of time on and it's kind of flopped because somebody hacked it and it's all gone? Or is it something that I want to spend a bit of time and money investing in to try and make it more worthwhile for me, as well as for the people that are obviously there? And I think that's where I started to recognize the value of myself, that it's great to be able to offer things completely and utterly for free, but I think there also needs to be some method of where you're getting reciprocation from that, and that's where the platform has changed. So some of the things that I do are now income generating. I do earn money from some of the stuff that I do, and a lot of that's mainly from consultancy work, because of the notoriety it's given me. People know that I know about tech, and know how to use it, and know how to explain it as well. And actually, there's value in that skill, and that's where things have changed, I think, particularly for the EGP learning platform and myself.
Who is the most inspiring person you have met in your career, Gandhi?
Oh wow, there's loads of people. If we're going to focus on clinical stuff, as in general practice itself, wow, that's a hard one. I'm gonna have to say, so I've got someone called Christine Johnson, who has been one of our local faculty representatives. She's been a chair, she's been a treasurer, and the way that she's supported me in terms of developing my own career since I came back to Nottingham has been the thing that's pushed me, if I'm being honest. So I became the chair of our local faculty because she pushed me to become the chair of faculty, and actually that was something that was really useful and valuable to me, and I hope was useful and valuable to the faculty members as well. But her mentorship throughout that period has been really valuable to me.
Amazing. What book have you read that has completely changed your mindset on life?
Oh, I've read loads. I think the most recent one has been The Miracle Morning, and I've completely forgotten the author's name now. It's gone. But yeah, no, there's a book called The Miracle Morning, and it talks about prioritizing your life. It talks about how actually having a routine first thing in the morning can be really valuable, and how it can improve your productivity. I've been doing that for the past a couple of months now, and actually it's made a huge impact in terms of what I can do, and recognizing that actually, I can be more effective if I'm look at the way that I manage myself.
Yeah, I think morning routine is important.
Mm-hmm.
One other question I ask guys is, what is your morning routine? So could you tell us your morning routine, Gandhi?
Yeah, so for those that have read The Miracle Morning, I would highly recommend it. It talks about 6 different things that you should be doing throughout your morning routine. I've not done the full 6. I found some of them that didn't really apply to me, but first thing I do, so I get up, I drink some water, brush my teeth, and then I do some stretching, so physical activity to try and get my brain working and things. I do some prayers, and then I spend time actually just doing some of my work effectively. So particularly things like projects that I'm looking at, aspirational stuff. That I tend to realize I've got a lot of inspirational thinking that happens, and my ideas kind of flow at that point. Um, and then I tend to go to work after that. So then I have a mini breakfast and stuff and head off to work and crack on with my daily day at that point.
So how long do you have in the morning to do your morning routine?
So it's gradually increasing. So I originally started just doing this from 6 o'clock. I'm now getting to the point where it's starting at 5:30, and then I normally leave the house about 7:30 to go to work. So it is increasing. Part of that routine is now spending time with my son in the morning. So every morning from 7 till 7:30, me and him are up, and we're just doing things. Whether we're doing stuff he wants to do, stuff he wants to play with, that kind of thing. Because he wakes up at 7 every morning, pretty much on the dot. So now, incorporating that time, and because I'm now getting up earlier, I'm able to do and spend that time with him before he needs to start getting ready for school, which is again, I think that's part of it. It's that family time.
Do you go to bed earlier then?
I've started to since I've done this. So I used to go to bed about 11, 12 o'clock at night, and now I'm shifting more towards the 10, 11, because actually I can function with about 6 hours sleep, 5 hours sleep. I can function quite well and effectively. So it's recognizing your own needs, really. Everyone's different. Some people, need 9, 10 hours. Some people need 4. And once you know where you are in that kind of spectrum, actually, you can fit your life around that a lot more effectively.
Yeah, there's no one size fit, and you have to try and see whichever works best for you.
Mm-hmm.
So, what would you like people to remember from you 100 years from now, Gandhi?
That I helped people, and that was a bit geeky in the way that I did it as well.
Okay, I'm respectful of your time. Before we wrap up, let's talk about 3 pieces of advice that you could give to AITs or newly qualified GPs.
So I think the first thing is respect yourself, and that may seem a bit weird to hear coming, effectively to hear from people. Um, but the most important lesson I've learned over my time is that if you don't respect yourself and respect your time and respect your value, then other people will find it hard to do. And therefore, prioritizing what is important to you is so important. And particularly in the role that we do as GPs, it's very easy to get sucked into that aspect of doing everything for anybody. And whether that's the patients, whether that's the practice, whether that's your peers, whether that's even your family and stuff. But you have to be happy that you're doing it for you first, because from then comes all the other kind of things and the positive stuff, I feel. Number 2, respect social media. So I spend a lot of time talking to people about the perils as well as the power of social media. And there's definitely good arguments on both ways. I clearly tend towards the power of it. But actually respecting social media as well is a valuable lesson, because it can be something that can cause you heartache and challenges. But when it's done and done effectively and done right, it can be one of the most amazing tools that exist to help you connect and to engage with people that you just would not have the opportunity to connect and engage with, and that networking possibility is unparalleled, and definitely outside of any kind of scope that you may have within your physical world. lastly, have fun. What's the point in doing all this stuff if you can't enjoy what you're doing? So have your passions, enjoy your passions. I don't hide the fact that I love things like board gaming and comics and that kind of stuff, and mythology is part of my core. It always has been and it always will be. And I'm comfortable in the way that I am with that. And I sometimes get told, well, you know, you can't have pictures of this in your clinical room and that kind of thing. And I'm like, well, that's me, and actually my patients love it. So I'm guessing some of you people hopefully have seen my avatar that I have. I've got a picture of that in my clinical room, and the patients love it. It's a talking point. It gets them engaged. It helps them recognize who I am, and it's fun, and fun is good.
There you have it, 3 pieces of advice from Dr. Gandhi. So respect yourself and respect social media. Social media is powerful when used appropriately, and use it. Yeah. And lastly, have fun. Have fun. If you want to tell people where to find you and connect with you, Dr. Gandalf, where can they find you and where can they connect with you?
So as I said, I've probably got the internet plugged into my brain, so I'm on almost every social media platform going. And yeah, if you want to find me, it's Dr. Gandalf or Dr. Gandalf 52 on the various different platforms. But if you're interested in the EGP learning stuff, just simply EGP learning into Google. It's egplearning.co.uk, and it's the same on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, everything. And I'm more than happy to talk and support people whatever they want to do. I've got various different ways I can do that, and if you just want to chat, always up for a chat as well.
Thank you, Dr. Gandalf. So I highly recommend you go and check out egplearning.co.uk. There's some amazing resources there if you work in primary care that you can have a look, and check out the podcast of Dr. Gandalf, EGP Podcast. I hope you find this video valuable. Let me know in the comment section. If you want more videos like this, please like this video so that I know. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel for new video every Thursday. Take care everybody. Bye bye.